noches, ¿se escucha? ¿Sí? Bueno, muchas gracias a todos y a todas por venir a una nueva actividad pública del SEAC. Es un placer tener hoy aquí en la escuela a Michael Meredith, del estudio neoyorquino MOS Architects, con nosotros. Como siempre, antes de arrancar con la actividad de hoy, me gustaría contarles un poco qué estamos planeando para los próximos días. A ver. Bueno, a ver, primer fail. El lunes próximo inauguramos la segunda exhibición que realizamos este año en la escuela, la exhibición Paudisones, Días, Ervin, Lestar, Traines, Varas, retrospectiva de 1968 a 1980, curada por Josefina Espósito, profesora de la escuela, y Martín Podestá, estudiante de maestría e investigador de la escuela. El estudio de arquitectura, Paudisones, Días, Ervin, Lestar, Traines, Varas, fue uno de los más prolíficos de la escena local argentina a partir de la década del 70. Realizó una práctica radical que a partir de una extensa variedad de obras y formatos logró ampliar la discusión disciplinar de la época. Esta exhibición, que tendrá lugar en el taller del segundo piso de arquitectura, comprende más de 60 documentos realizados entre estas fechas y que forman parte del archivo de Tella Arquitectura, y propone reeditar el diálogo entre la producción del estudio para encargos privados, concursos públicos y consorcios autogestionados de viviendas y oficinas. La exhibición inaugura el próximo lunes a las 19 horas y va a estar abierta durante un mes para poder visitarse con inscripción previa. Además de la inauguración, en la cual están todos invitados, dentro de un par de semanas vamos a realizar una mesa redonda con algunos de los autores y los curadores, a los cuales también están invitados y que podrán enterarse por las redes sociales y la página web de la escuela. La semana que viene también... ahí va. El jueves vamos a estar recibiendo en el SEAC a la paisajista Beatriz Borque Badenas, quien estará participando de las actividades del programa en Arquitectura del Paisaje, dirigido por Ignacio Flerkin. Esto es el próximo jueves a las 19 horas. Como siempre, pueden ver más información en la página web de la escuela e inscribirse por allí también. Bueno, ahora... Uy, no le agarré la mano. Now, going back to Michael and switching to English. Thank you so much, Michael, for being a part of our lecture series program. We're really excited to have you here. We also want to thank you for collaborating with the school during the pandemic, during some series of online events. And we're really excited for your presentation and for all the talks we've been having these few days. We think you're one of the few exceptional practitioners who are not only interested in your work, but in what's going on in other people's works, in other people's thinking. So we are really grateful for all the time you're spending with us. In order to introduce you more properly, I'd like to give the mic to Juan García Mosqueda. Juan García Mosqueda is a curator. He did his master studies in theory and history in the Architectural Association in London, and he runs Chamber. Chamber is a curatorial platform he founded in 2014. So Juan, thank you so much for joining us for this.
Bueno, gracias Javi, la verdad que es un placer estar acá y agradezco esta invitación a pesar de no estar formalmente involucrado con la escuela. Y de paso aprovecho también para felicitarte por este ciclo de conferencias que lleva un inmenso esfuerzo no solo a nivel práctico, sino intelectual. Voy a ser muy breve, así pasamos a escuchar a Michael, que es lo que nos ha convocado a todos a estar presentes hoy acá. I first met Michael roughly about 10 years ago, via an awkward Skype call across continents, after I had emailed him about the possibility of designing a new gallery in New York for Chamber. I had seen MOS's after-party pavilion at MoMA's PS1, but in all honesty, I had little or no knowledge of their practice. What started as a short brief with a few quotes from Walter Benjamin, some loose images of the Green Vault in Dresden, transitioned to a conversation about how to deal with ducts, vents, and permits, to find us back at the end of the process, chatting on how the materiality of display system could reflect a certain take on the dialectic between Eisenmann's conceptualism and Zumthor's realism. Far from the typical client-architect relationship, it was the beginning of a long-lasting affinity that has still continued to this day. But it wasn't his ideas, which were and still are incredibly relevant for the discipline, what led me to continuously work with Hilary and him throughout the past decade, but his passion and love for the broader field of aesthetics. Sure, Michael is an architect and teaches architecture, but he's constantly looking and searching for images, objects, and concepts outside of the hard boundaries of the discipline, across art, design, philosophy, and even pop culture. In fact, that might be one of his most outstanding virtues, the ability, or curse, to not only constantly try to diagnose what the current state of affairs is, but also to take a position, which in some cases has generated a sense of friction with those promoting alternative stands. Form for Michael extends across media. He pays equal attention to tables, buildings, videos, books, and texts. He's a skillful writer, not only concerned with content, but also with the architecture of the text and its expressive qualities. His writings have been featured all over the world in publications such as Artforum, Log, and HDM. Michael masters the art of bending metal sheets as much as the scenographic components involved in the curation of exhibitions. Installations, housing, souvenirs, interiors, chairs, all encompass an extraordinary body of work that denote a certain love and care for the history and theory of art, architecture, and design. Affect is rarely mentioned in architecture schools these days. We still retain residues of the Frankfurt School, where critical theory equates with uncovering the structures of power behind the objects that we create. Yet love for what we do, our histories, whichever those are, taking the time to perform a close reading of the things around us, seems to have been thrown under the rug in the past years. Ironically, anthropology departments in the Anglo-Saxon countries have been moving away from humans and been focusing on objects, to those things that exceed the human being. On the other hand, architecture departments have been shifting from objects to subjects, a certain biographical turn, so to speak, focusing on the life of the creators and their identities. MOS provides us with a counter-narrative, a return to objects, so to speak. But what kind of objects is the question? Objects that make us laugh as much as they make us think. Objects that have no shame in mixing high and low culture. Objects that display and challenge the normalization of dogmatic architectural values. However we want to look at what Michael and Hilary have made so far using words like primitive, quirky, absurd, or straight up weird, we will always fall short of a practice that keeps expanding its own language while keeping a strong and steady sense of consistency throughout their career. Their intellectual strategy has been quite effective. They tend to position themselves against the architectural status quo, but always from a point of view rooted deep within the core of the architectural establishment. Their teaching posts in two of the most prestigious Ivy League schools, Princeton and Columbia, have not only allowed them to perform this role, but also have helped reinforce the notion that it is a system which demands and feeds from this very attitude. There would probably not be a MOS without the academy, just as there would not exist an American architectural school as we know it today without practices heavily involved in the discursive, such as MOS. Or can we perhaps read their manic obsession to produce new bibliography every year as a certain critique of the academic system that requires architects to publish continuously as intellectual machines subdued to a superstructure that is leaving practice far behind discourse? Knowing them personally, I believe that not to be the case at all. Michael and Hilary produce books because they want to, because they firmly believe that their ideas are equally expressed both in a high-budget master plan and a children's book. It is of my opinion that now at the height of their mid-career, the most important legacy that MOS has left us so far is the ability to provide us with the necessary tools to openly talk about contemporary architecture, against the Hegelian vision that consciousness comes always already too late. We might not always agree with them. We might not always share their vision of creating categories that we should align ourselves to, like low-res, high-res, shapes versus systems, creating an us versus them dialogue. But what is undeniable is that through pure wit, they have made us highly aware of the way we talk, think, and make architecture. And for that, at least myself, I'm forever grateful. Please join me in welcoming my collaborator, colleague, but most importantly, friend, Michael Meredith.
All right. Oh, wait. Gotta find the on button. All right. Wow, thank you. Come on. Yeah. Okay. Am I going the wrong way? No. All right. Let's try this. It will probably be not as, that sounded far more, this will be much simpler. So these are my notes. I'm going to read some of it, and I'll try to be clear. This is a selection work. Everything and Nothing is a title, but because it's a selection work from the past 10 years. It's bracketed by 2 books. I have to pick something in a way. Everything All at Once, which is really our first book, which is a sort of statement on architectural medium. It may sound sort of arcane now, I think, we talk about medium, but about medium, post-medium specificity, and an idea about architecture that exists in many different formats simultaneously. It was a sort of an extension of an essay called Radical Inclusion. Anyways, it's the past. Is it too low? Yeah? Cool. I can try to talk a lot. I'm a kind of low talker in the Seinfeld. Okay. The other bracket is vacant spaces, which is on the other side of it, and that kind of represents where we are now, where we used publicly available data from New York City to look at, basically the thesis of the book is to look at New York City at the moment, and we started right before COVID and worked on it through COVID to sort of, to make a thesis that there's already so much vacant space available. We don't need to build, let's say, housing. It's there. If we want to build or find affordable housing, we can find the space and rework it. So that is the kind of, let's say, nothing on the other end of the bracket. So these 10 years, I think for myself, when we do these lectures, it's kind of reflection, inevitably, self-conscious. And it's hard to know if there's how to understand, for at least even from myself, how it shows a shift or not. In some ways, these things never change. Ideas persist, qualities persist, a kind of beauty, maybe, hopefully, an ambiguity between familiar and strange, generic. Actually, things are always there, even early on, like words, which were striking to me when I look at the work going back, because I forget about the work too. I'm more like involved in like what the crises of the moment in the office. A sort of quality of composition and non-composition, I would say. And like Hilary and I, we live in our office. So architecture, like Juan was saying, is very much intertwined with our lives, for better or worse. It's always personal. It's not a large office. We always say it's at least 2, Hilary and myself. And we are in conversation with each other through the work. We're in conversation through writing. We are constantly writing. We were tenured and whatever, so we don't need to do it anymore. But it's just part of our practice. We're always doing little, I would say, kind of adolescent experiments almost. And we're always in conversation with people in the office. We're part of conversations at schools, with our teachers who still haunt us, with living and dead architects. We're in conversation with artists that we do not know, and some we do know. We are talking to inanimate objects. We talk with technology and material. We are in conversation with our families, with colleagues, students, with international group of friends. We're in conversation with clients, communities, contractors, city inspectors, providing services for others. And in looking at the work, back at the work, I see the conversations, and these conversations seem more and more important to us nowadays. And conversations are something that is never evident to others. It's just part of the life of an architect. They're ephemeral, and somehow these conversations are constantly transformed into wood, to concrete and metal. So I will start. This is that first book. I'm just going to run through things kind of quickly, like a stop motion movie. I don't know if I need to say much. This sort of shows where we were at playing with software. We were doing physics-based engines and playing with like dropping blocks and looking at different forms, playing with this relationship between ideal and real, let's say, at some level. Looking at structure as a kind of motivator. This is after party we're talking about. Making movies or videos, I don't know what you call them. Installations. This is one of those videos. I sort of broke it into pieces for everybody, but it's basically, this is one of the projects. This is much of our work I'm more interested now in all the things that never got built, in a way. The little projects that you do along the way. So this is a story, and these stories are always, the writing is important. And so we're always writing and describing projects, but this is like a movie about a husband and wife architecture office, Frank and Alice. Their office is called, I think it's called the Boudoir, and which is obviously a kind of Tufuri reference. There's a ton of little references, and I was looking at this and I was thinking it's all there, like even early on, what we were talking about. Okay.
You switch mics. Give me.
You can try to yell or something, or hold it up higher.
But I think it's better if you use that.
Does that work? Okay.
That's it.
Sorry.
Give me your
All right. So these are the types of things we were doing early on at the beginning of the practice. We were doing these very simple filming of big models that we made in the office, writing little stories about architecture for us. I don't know if I can. So these are some of the projects, and I'm just going to this is the writing that happens at the time of the project in some cases. So this is one that you referenced in a way. The argument goes: form is a system, and shapes are shapes. The two are disciplinary frenemies. They act like friends from time to time, or part of the same clique, but privately they trash each other. People are pedantic technicians, neurotic puppet masters of geometry. They obsess over means. They talk too much about process. They claim to like Schoenberg. Shape people describe themselves as cool, easy, and graphic. They're interested in the immediacy of effects. They live in Williamsburg. Systems are typically based in plan. Shapes are of elevation or silhouettes. Systems are conceptual. Shapes are commercial. Systems like repetition and deference, they use patterns, trajectories, and magnitude. Shapes prefer singularity. They use fillets to round corners and reinforce shapes. Systems are centrifugal and shapes are centripetal. Systems get excited about the allure of computation. They play with CATIA, processing or grasshopper, mumbling intensely about discretizing surfaces. Shapes prefer Photoshop and Illustrator. They use pens. Systems frustrate pictorial imagery through their emphasis on process. They gaze at their feet. Shapes relish the pictorial. They swoon for photos. Systems produce their own ground. Shapes don't like anything that disrupts their shape. This little house in the middle of nowhere is indifferent to all of the above. And I would say the categorization, or in a way the us, them, is only there to erase it almost. In some ways, these are things that when writing it, things that I think are going on in the field, or conversations I hear, or positions. So you write these things and you think about them. So this is it's a guest house for actually a piece of land art in Las Vegas, New Mexico. It's made out of SIPs, what we call SIPs. It was a very simple kind of geometric, like the plan I think of as like a kind of blown up, I don't know if you know, like the Shapiro House by Louis Kahn, or some of these hexagonal houses by Frank Lloyd Wright, late work. This kind of blown up detail of one of those. So I'm not going to go into all the technical details, but continuous aluminum helps work as a heat sink for the building as well, to like remove heat gain, stuff like this. And the chimneys are really solar chimneys to help with using a cool air mass underneath the building. There's vents in here, and these can open up the skylights to allow for cool air to move up. This is a school built at Krabbesholm campus in Skive, Denmark. Our addition is a group of 4 studio buildings: art, architecture, graphic design, photography, a little campus on the campus. The buildings are connected by a courtyard, places to hang out, share ideas. The courtyard, a result of their calculated ad hoc arrangement. It feels informal, but it is not intentional. The buildings are oriented towards each other. A painter watches an architect in confusion from 100 feet away. An architect watches a graphic designer go home at 7 p.m. from 80 feet away. The large square windows make voyeurism easy. Between private studios, there are covered porches, a social space. The porches are shared, filled with chairs and tables, filled with gaps, spaces in between and transition. So this is an architecture school. It's part of a folk arts tradition in Denmark. These are studios. It's a very simple project. Something like, I want to say 60% or more of all architects go to school in this, which is insane to me, in Denmark. It's made with cement panels, very economical. Some of the things we did were like to get the reveals are like polished stainless for the clips between the panels. That's like the only kind of detail. So it sort of shimmers as you move around it, the joints. Hard to photograph. .48 barrel vaults, 48 linear light fixtures, 14 Carrera marble shelves, 100 and 35 aluminum rods, one glowing triangular sci-fi looking niche, 102 linear feet of lighting track, 7 perforated wall panels, 6 unperforated metal wall panels, 13 square marble display surfaces, 3 skylights, 2 wood door stops, 1 custom toilet paper holder, which wasn't great, and 46 aluminum bars laid in the ground floor. A couple bad ideas, a couple good ones. Chamber is an accumulation of stuff. It accumulates stuff. Systems of display, a chamber, a gallery, design underneath the high line, near the center of something, a leftover space, quote unquote, cold and dark. A broker was involved. The client sometimes believes design is a sort of pagan religion, worshiping idols. He calls it chamber, we call it chamber. We measured an archaeal excavation of the present. We drew as many vaults as we could. They fit around ducts, pipes, beams, as many as possible. We couldn't fit more into the strange landscape of the ceiling. Everything else was trying to be empty. An image of a sanctuary or a real one, we're unsure. A drawing of marble etched into real marble. A chamber, a store, a temporary figment of our imagination. There's Juan right there. And I think working on chamber and with Juan, like I said, I was at the beginning of how things are a conversation and how we are in a way affected by everything. I think after or while working on it, we started working on objects more in a way, and we started thinking about the culture of objects. And so we started doing these what were fake reproductions. A lot of people thought they were real, but they aren't real. And they're sort of stories about the architectural discipline. So this one, the story is like, it's about, the first one we did was a scented candle. It was like the worst. It was like the thing I was trying to think of something that was the worst thing that my teachers would be upset about or like hated, you know, like what would upset people in the design world or architecture world to do something frivolous. And we wrote a story about, I was always taught there was 2 types of architects. There was Adolf Loos and Joseph Hoffman. And Loos was like who you wanted to be, which was like a serious, conceptual, smart architect. And Hoffman was a kind of sort of commercial dandy or something. And that kind of divide seemed irrelevant to me. So a young Adolf Loos was attending the infamous design workshop held by Joseph Hoffman, who was at the height of his influence in Viennese society. Hoffman was teaching all the students to produce decor in a new modern style. At that time, the architectural world was interested in the production of totalizing atmosphere and ambiance. Atmosphere modern, as it was known in the academy. Under Hoffman's direction, Loos spent a few weeks designing a scented candle. It was done in Viennese Schwartz, which is known as a specific type of black. It smelled like Calipen, a specific forest where he spent his childhood searching for mushrooms. The candle aggregates to make larger agglomerated compositions. Unfortunately, there are almost no drawings or images left of one of Loos's earliest designs. So we were doing these things all the time, just little experiments. While working at Louis Kahn's office, Robert Venturi used to doodle in the margins of the drawings. Lou would get frustrated and say, "Bob, really, what is this crap? Can you please erase it?" This reproduction is based on one of these erased doodles. The dimensions were interpolated, but his voice is evident even in this early and modest piece. Figuring out the extent of an object from an erased doodle is difficult, so the object is sold in multiple pieces that can be fastened together to whatever desired length and configuration. Jumping ahead. Before entering the Bauhaus textile program, Lily was enrolled in a little-known Bauhaus modern scythe program and academic department based on the design of avant-garde soaps. The scythe students were known to take 4 to 5 baths daily in order to test their art, which explains their radiant complexions in early photographs. The program was notorious due to a string of scandals. and was shut down within weeks of its inauguration. Even though it was very short-lived, the soaps were known to provide an uncanny cleanliness through abstraction. Lily produced some of the most important early modernist avant-garde soaps of her time. Although all written evidence of the program has since been destroyed, what little is known is through the undocumented conversations between Bauhaus maintenance staff and their children. Anyways, there's so many of these things we were doing. And at the same time, other books, there's other things that were going on. This is a book we did on scale figures without architecture, basically looking at representation of the human, of people, and in a way, like who gets represented in architectural drawings. And it was just sort of erasing the architecture, looking at these things. So we just try to be super, I mean, I love that. I like to think that Alvar Aalto invented Darth Vader. So, and just sort of collecting. Yeah, Lina Bobardi is amazing in scale figures. But it's amazing how much Bjorke puts himself in his drawings, I thought at the time. I don't know if I should say that, but the projects are somewhat chronological, sort of. There are many ways to describe the house through its parts: 5 volumes, 1 courtyard, 3 beds. It could be 2, it could be 1 shower, 6 entryways, 14 windows, 21 sliding doors. Through metaphor, the house is a person reaching into the landscape or waving to the Google Earth satellite. Through formal organization, the 3-bedroom house is an informal aggregation of 5 house-shaped extrusions with a square courtyard volume subtracted at its center. Through a personal narrative, the house is shared with a family, multiple generations, multiple family members. There are children, there are pets. The family loves to be outside. They love to garden. They keep their most precious herbs in the courtyard. At night, Sam watches Mom pick mint for tea through courtyard's large glass windows. Dad falls asleep in an uncomfortable wicker chair in what looks like a hallway, but is actually his favorite place to read. Charlie sits alone in their room, out of sight, looking into the endless woods through large sliding doors, wondering what might be lurking in the forest beyond. Or through verbs, the house is a flattened a splatter. Or through the iPhone note one of the architects first wrote on their phone before screenshotting it and sending it to their partner. 6:45 a.m. There is no master bedroom, no his or her sinks, no living room, no dining room, no rooms, no garage. There are many fronts. You can walk inside to outside to in and out again. It is both looking inward at the garden court and out at its surroundings. Things are incomplete, barely held together. Everything happens in spaces between other spaces. Hallways and corridors are treated as places to stay and hang out. Ooh. It's a little glitchy. Everything is basically open. Like there's no doors to the bedrooms, no door to the bathroom. In a way, it sort of wraps around here, and then this closet door closes to create some privacy. But everything is, the only 2 doors really that are closed are real doors, or these 2 on the inside, and the rest are exterior doors. And there's a kind of, I mean, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail. You can talk more. It's not actually that informally organized. There's plenty of classic games that all us architects play, which are like symmetry and asymmetry, localized symmetry, etc. These are everywhere, and even references to other stuff is there, maybe at least for us, but it's not obvious. I mean, like in some ways, this is like, is it like a split house? like a one house cut into two, or is it two houses coming together? So one of the books that we did, there was another book that's not in here where it was for a Venice Biennial, and it was based off of, we have a love of Richard Scarry. I don't know if that translates for everybody here, but these kind of children's books on the city and so it's always been a reference in a way for some of our drawings. And so we were approached by CCA to do a children's book and to work with Corini, which is a great publishing house in Italy that worked with Bruno Manari. So we did this. It's a story of a family looking for a house, and then sort of going through and looking at a sort of history of houses. And then deciding that they were going to build their own house after looking at all these other houses. And then started to look at how things are made, construction, material. And then at the end, after building the house, it becomes too much, and so they sell it. And it's sort of about a kind of search for architecture that never ends. At some point before Twitter, the corridor killed a certain type of architecture. Corridors collapsed into light wells, diagrams became buildings. It was all transit all the time. Architecture became the circulation of things, people, air, light, goods, blank, etc. Space became a lubricant. It was almost spiritual. Architecture embraced this new efficiency, the short circuit, a faster way of getting from one place to another. As space was replaced with movement, stuff was jettisoned. The leftovers piled up. Nowadays, corridors are an afterthought, an indifferent chasm joining this to that in houses all across everywhere. This house occupies that circuitry. It's one variation of many. It's an assembly of parts that are both technical and archetypal. Each module approximates the dimensions of a standard corridor and a sheet of plywood. In many cases, the space of contemporary corridors is big enough to inhabit, to fit a bed, a desk, a chair, stuff, like a clogged toilet. One after another, each module is positioned orthogonally. The exhausted, broken pediment has been copied and pasted without end. It's illegible. The overall configuration is loosely organized around a collection of exterior spaces, but it's disassociated from the ground. It's repetitive. It's made of parts. It's casual. It's banal. It's almost familiar. It's nothing in particular. It fits on a truck. This is like a house prototype in the first Chicago Biennial. Juan was very much, the chamber curated still want that copper bike. I don't know what happened to that thing, but it's beautiful. Made of insulation of structure, 98 blocks of foam with 8 doors. A typical house is made of layers and layers of specific products of countless seams and assemblies. This house is not like that. It's an experimental prototype made from EPS foam blocks. The blocks are large, almost monoliths, almost megaliths, foam megaliths. The EPS factory is nearby. Architecture is like food. The less processes, labor, shipping, people are involved, the more sustainable it is. Assembly takes 4 days. The foam is coated with a rough cement or stucco finish or something else. The roof is a ziggurat. It looks like stacked blocks from a distant past, a children's toy. $200,000 to build, cheap, crude, durable, light, although looks heavy, beautiful, like a cave, a fake cave, somewhere between Frank Lloyd Wright and a Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. I have to get better at clicking. Yeah, what happened? I feel like it's going over stuff quickly. Volumes of brick, stacked blocks of brick, heavy, sometimes symmetrical, other times slipped, off-center, askew, movement, proportions, surfaces of bonds and joints divine volumes. They make things less stable. Small and squat, on one side to an open garden, on the other to a private walled garden. House within a garden, and gardens within a house. Originally, we had another walled patio garden for the living room that they had removed, maybe for the better. All the living spaces on one level, a place to age in place. Things repeat, pairs, doubling, 2 identical bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, 2 closets, 2 private gardens, 2 chimneys, also symmetrical. These are familiar, contextual even. Someone called them ears when they were taller. Now they are shorter. One chimney is full of fireplaces and flues, and one empty. A void over a shower, lit from above. It feels larger on the inside. This is part of a large master plan in St. Louis. Tatiana Bilbao was the architect who did the master plan, and we were invited to do. There's a house prototype, and it's repeated 4 times in the master plan. So there's 4 of these. It's the basement. An oversized pitch roof, a hat with holes, a rock with a busy world underneath it. Underneath, a simple 2-story studio for making art and taking photographs clad in corrugated metal. No attempts are made to hide the roof's construction. Its eaves overhang, its rafters are exposed, so are its beams. Square openings are cut into the roof, simply placed wherever it felt right. They move, they drift, they frame views. Sometimes they open a gabled end to windows beyond. Sometimes they look like eyes. Other times they notch the eaves above a window to a stair or studio, and other times they fall across the roof's pitch as large skylights. It's made with cheap materials. The interior is basically 3 interconnected rooms. The plywood room is the most interior for self-reflection, but they can be used for anything. This is an early version. There's other versions of it. I think the images are too big, maybe, I'm not sure. Biblioteca is a one-room open-air design school for young children. It is a place for looking and making, and for making and looking. It is 688 aluminum pieces, modeled, flattened, cut, folded, prefabricated, shipped, and then assembled on site by a few people in a few days. It is made to be reassembled. It could be constructed anywhere and elsewhere. We imagine different contexts. It looks low-tech. We made large paper models by hand. It looks high-tech. We made parametric fabrication files. We photographed, we sketched, we looked at various angles. We adjusted the elements. We lowered the eaves. We tried other proportions. These look good for the moment. It looks industrial. It looks familiar. It looks abstract. It's made of building elements, a long, low roof with columns and stacked beams holding it up. It's made of folded aluminum. It has a sign made of folded aluminum. It has furniture made of folded aluminum. It's meant to be looked at. It is meant to be inhabited. It is meant for others' enjoyment. It's a stage. It makes other stages. We look, it looks. We make, it makes. If I need to stand near or anything. This is it. This is in it's in Versailles. It's in an architecture school in a kind of courtyard. It's still up. It was done a while ago now, but they're still using it, which is nice. And one of the things we did when doing this project that we want to do, because it's for a design school for children in the summertime. They also use it for the architecture school for reviews and meetings and stuff. Is that we asked architects we like to provide design exercises for the children. Which you'll see became another book. So this is the book. Sebastian Marcello. We're still doing too many, maybe, of these small things. This was a project that was part of an exhibition in the Guggenheim Bilbao. We were asked by the curator to do I don't even know it was something on architecture and effects, actually, I think. This is called a tent without a signal. It's a tent, it's without a signal, it's without a noise. This might mean nothing to you. Inside, your phone does not work. You cannot call your friends. You cannot email your boss. You cannot post your selfie. You cannot search, you cannot like anything, you cannot. If you want to know what the weather will be or send your location to somebody, do not bother. If you stay too long, you will get bored. Even quiet is exhausting after a while. This tent is like many and unlike many. It has a circular O-shaped bench at its base and an X-shaped structure at its top. It is a hug and a kiss. It is closed and open. It is not primitive. It is not a primitive hut. Isn't it how odd technology and nature have become inseparable? Maybe they always were. This structure is lightweight, made of aluminum parts that can be easily packed up and moved from place to place, assembled. It looks something like an antenna, and something like a teepee. It is not a beginning of architecture. It is not an origin. Origins are relative. Regardless, it makes a place to sit or take a nap or retreat or doodle or write this text that you're reading or plan a revolution. This fabric offers some shelter. The fabric is CNC knitted, stitched together with electromagnetic field shielding yarns. It's like the yarns are really cool. It's a company called Chilex. The fabric pattern was iteratively developed through homemade handcrafted software that produces a field of noisy particles like a landscape or TV static. The pattern does not repeat. The tent is neither high tech nor low tech, and for the time being, it's temporary. The knitting, I wish we did more with the CNC knitting. I love this stuff. It's with a company called Stoll. They were all made in Italy, all the fabric, with Stoll Italia, and then sent to Bilbao. I would love to do like curtains with this stuff. Anyways. An awkward corner, twin volumes interconnected, twin courtyards apart, a shared base, a triangular exterior on the park of the corner, a 23-degree angle, a 31-degree angle, acute and scalene, trigonometry, not calculus, things that lean on each other, twins, couples, they need each other. We need each other. Perhaps we always find the anthropomorphic qualities in things, selfies. Two blocks trying to fit in, a square and a rectangle cross paths. The intersection is circulation. Two U-shaped hallways, horseshoes, cross ventilation in the units, large windows at one time, they made them smaller. Developers telling us what to do. Developers who act terrible at times. It's nothing like school. It's what the market wants. Value engineering, cheap materials, contractors telling us what to do even when it doesn't make sense. Sales consultants. Everything is local. Reason doesn't always win arguments. Good clients are hard to find. They want a deal, want you to make them money. Nothing is as transparent as it should be. If only everything was more transparent. We all prefer to not talk about the details. What is easier? What is less of a risk? Maybe we should embrace it or not. Standard cheap construction of another typology. Somehow this is both different and completely average. So this is like, we have two projects here that are kind of important for us, but also, I wouldn't say are successes. Maybe they are in some ways, but they're compromises in a lot of ways. But this was it's affordable housing. Both these projects are affordable housing, formerly homeless. It's like the most hardcore form of housing in the US. This particular one is an odd-shaped site, and it's based off of, in the US, we have other problems too with how our codes work. I don't know how it works here, but like we need two means of egress and we need to have a certain distance. Usually that ends up in what's called a dumbbell typology with a corridor and two stairs on either end. In this case, we did our stairs here, and we were able, because of the distances, to get circulation with natural light from two courtyards that also allow for the units to exist. And everything is the structure works as a concentric model in kind of rings around it. We were able to get a real mix of types also for different, from like 4-bedroom units to studios. But at the same time, it's like, I mean, it's like the worst materials. Wish I could get like more steady pace for the clicking, but it's not agreeing with me. This is the second project, the same developer, actually. Previously left off maps and excluded community, affordable housing for formerly homeless, 13 row houses total, 26 apartments, an argument for shared communal park space instead of a parking lot. Developers care about money. They call it product. You can tell it's difficult. They sell products. We use different languages. We have different values. We design more units than they thought possible, more product. We thought this would help us negotiate for better materials, larger windows. The buildings step slightly along existing grade. The units stay level, parking underneath, parking behind with direct access. The site is an odd shape, a 5-sided irregular polygon. The housing is 2 trapezoids. It's 2 trapezoidal bars. It worked out that way. The geometry shift in plan and section, but the windows align, holding everything together. We had roof patios, but they were value engineered out. A series of small tragedies. Cheap materials, money almost always wins. They care a little about design. They think vinyl flooring is good enough. They laughed at our concerns. The apartments on the tapered end have the most windows. Every unit has a light well. Everything repeats. Large windows, light, air, interlocking, duplex units, 3 floors for 2 apartments. There's a beauty in basic things, maybe typology, scale, and proportion is all we have. So this actually is, I think it's kind of from top down. You can kind of see like the stair, this sort of double stair here allows for a kind of duplex unit where one will go up. It may be hard to read these, but let me go backwards. So if you, like, this will take you up to the 1 unit where you start in the back here, and then you can continue up to a full thing here, or you can go in the door into this unit and go up here to like the other half of your duplex back here. There's the site is sloped, but there is like we put parking underneath here to sort of free up the back to be a public space or a park type space for the residents. We need to write stuff. An apartment with a large skylight, the top floor of an old artist loft, plywood furniture, generous space, warm light. Started with the pandemic, ended with a vaccine. So this is like a typical New York kind of project in a way. But in some ways, the client was amazing. A very young guy, doctor actually, deep involved in COVID work in New York City, and we just designed everything. Basically, we did the bed, we did the towel. This is my favorite, actually, the towel bars, the tables. Daybed, lamps. Ooh. I don't really understand what the technology is doing here, but we'll go with it. Yeah. And I will just probably should point out a couple things, like all of our work with metal, we tend to we don't use welds. Everything is folded and then bolted together. It's out of a kind of economy. It's something we've been doing forever since we started because it was a lot cheaper. You don't have to work with a fabricator. You can just work with like a factory that just folds the stuff and then it gets assembled on site. So the last thing is the book Vacant Spaces, which is, as I said at the beginning, is a kind of research project we did just really from, I think a lot of the work we do just comes from being observant to things around you in a way. And it started from just looking at everything around us. We're located in Upper Manhattan in Harlem, our office, and it's just a crazy amount of vacancy. And so we tried to, New York City is publicly available data on vacancy. It's actually incredibly under documented, but it is documented especially by kind of large financial groups who are doing it for tax reasons. So we went through the documents and we calculated everything. We went through all of Manhattan as sort of probably one of the densest city in America, and just looked at how much vacancy is there and what is documented. And then we went through and, like, in a way, every single vacancy has a picture of the place, like how long it's been vacant for, like 2,526 days. It's like, and who's the owner, etc. And then we did just like really went into all the data we could and tried to talk about, in a way, what we could do with this vacancy, and looking at housing and kind of community needs, clinics and things like this, homeless shelters, and we're doing like case studies with it, really simple, very, very quick in a way, and mostly looking at ground floor spaces that are documented as vacant, because they are kind of easier to deal with egress and things like this, some code issues that we were seeing. So, and in New York, ground floor, let's say apartments and things like this are not as considered as it is in like a place like Amsterdam, let's say, or something, or many other places in the world. It's like, so it's become something that we want to look at. I think that's nothing. I think that's the end of what I have. So, thank you. I am happy to take questions or whatever. If that's, I don't know how you do it around here.
I grab a mic. Lola? Thank you, Michael, for, I think, the most literary talk we've had so far. It was a surprise.
Yeah.
We're open for questions or comments. I don't know who should start.
I'm okay with any question.
I have one, perhaps not so easy, but
yeah.
I think this está acoplando, ¿no? Acá se escucha.
I hear you.
And I wanted to ask you about your insights. Now you have the office for more than 10 years. And
20 years, really. Yeah.
Almost, 20 years. And
a little less.
What has changed since you started? Because the work looks very cohesive, as Juan said, coherent, and always with the same topics. But I guess that changing scale, working in different countries. I translated one of your texts once a couple of years ago, and it was really hard not to get some words lost in translation.
Yeah.
So I wanted to know what has changed for you, for the office, for your interests, or perhaps nothing at all.
I guess I was trying to say in the introduction for us, what's important now, I don't know if it's the architecture. I think it changes because of it, but I don't know how. I mean, like, it's also kind of ridiculous that I know I will be able to know the work better than somebody else in a way, but what we care most about now is like the company we keep, like who we're talking to, who we're working with. I think the housing for us was incredibly important. I mean, it was huge. We did everything. We were not the. You can tell it's kind of upsetting, but it was a kind of important experience to do something at that scale. I didn't show like the stuff. Didn't show a pen. Actually, the kind of more successful in some ways housing work we did in Mexico, and many other things that we're doing. But it was a tough. I think we realized at that point it's like life is short, and we just want to have be learning from other people around us and be having good conversations about the work. And I feel very lucky. I mean, I feel very lucky being here in a way. I've enjoyed our conversations that not only here but for years in a way that go on. And I feel like I do feel like our work is affected and changed by others. I mean, I was thinking about when the conversation thing. I wrote that on my phone, trying to think of an introduction. And it was kind of like a take on. I started to understand maybe like Louis Kahn saying talking to bricks and saying, what does a brick want to be? Which always seems super absurd to me and silly. But I thought, as I get older, I sort of understand that more, to be honest. So it's like, we're always in conversation with others. I mean, think of anything. Also, I'm a teacher. So for me, one of the things that's been lost in schools where I am is that architecture is in conversation with others. We're a weird art form. I mean, most artists don't provide services. We provide services. We have to work with other people. So I think of that as a good thing, and we're very lucky, and I enjoy that. Sorry.
An easy one.
Yeah.
What's the obsession with rocks? All the models. They are pre models.
Yeah, they showed up.
Projects.
It really came out of the corridor house thing. We were doing them. It showed up in this is what maybe the everything all at once is good for. They showed up as we needed something in the model, and then we liked them in the model, so we made these little rocks for the model, and then we were like, let's make it in real life. So we made it into bean bags that you could sleep on or something around the thing, and then it became House 10, when we were excavating, they found all these rocks, and then we were like, oh, let's put the rocks all around the house. It just sort of, these things sort of happen through the work. It's not like we were thinking that somehow, it just sort of happened. I don't know, can't describe it. So you look at it and you're making your things, and you have to step back and look at it and learn from the own things that are made, and figure out what they mean or how to move forward with it constantly. So.
Yeah, I like the rocks and all the models, because I would say they are like the solution between the system and shape theory of one of the texts, because they look vernacular, but they are shapeless, but at the same time they always look familiar. So I always use them as a hint when I see them in the models. So Sarah, that's a question. I don't have it really clear what I wanted to ask you, but I find in the memoir, in the description, the memoirs, that you have radical compactation of things. You are very inclusive. I find it very interesting that in a very compact text, you include everything. And at the same time, there is nothing. I like the relationship between the name of the lecture and the text, which I think you pay more attention because you read every text. And maybe if you can expand a little bit your knowledge about why that is that interesting for you in architecture, that kind of inclusiveness to erase things.
I don't know. I like the the texts are for us also, and some of the projects, like the videos, the same thing, or some of it, are a sort of pleasure to write and to work on and think about. I mean, there's no client for it. There's no rational reason to do any, like half of the work is not it's not a good business model, I would say, but it's necessary it's important, and every office has a kind of culture, let's say. It's important to be like that I think we are very open in a way. I tend to think about the work through, also I could talk about it through many ways. I mean, that's the thing also. It's like I can go through many different ways to think about it, but one way is like, I think we're in a kind of, in a model that is architecturally, we're kind of I would call it anti-expressionism. I don't know how this stuff works. I feel like I want to apologize for my provincialism, in a way, but it's like things like, to me as a student, what we were always taught as a kind of avant-garde model was a kind of anti-expressionism. It's a kind of erasure of architecture. And so we kind of wanted to use the erasures against itself almost to some degree and pile them up and make them into something. So but I still, in some level, I can't, I don't know, it's changing though. So maybe that is changing. Like, I don't think 10 years ago, I would show process stuff or sketches or things that are much more gross, in a way, personal, in a way, like process stuff. It would not be on the table. I think that has changed quite a bit. So, we were always against like everybody here, I'm sure students, we were against our teachers to some degree. And our teachers were like 90s digital in the US. So it was like, I always thought the parametric, even though I think we started out parametric in some ways, and we started out with the stuff our teachers taught us. We tried it for a little while and then just formed our own opinions. And so like the expressionism, for me, parametricism was always like expressionism plus positivism, which makes no sense in some level, but that's what it is. Like, you can do like painterly gestures and then mathematically argue for it or something. And I think that kind of ridiculousness, for me, at least what I thought was, we kind of took a different stance on technology at that point. I think we still use it, and I think I'm actually, mostly my role in the office is a technician. Like, I care about the details, and I don't sit around just like talking like nonsense all the time. So it's like, the nonsense is like kind of pleasure, but it happens at a different point. So I sit around and like go through and technical. I'm even, how it is, like figuring out a handrail detail or something that we want to do or whatever it would be. I get involved in like all the little stuff. So I take a great pleasure in that, but it's also a different, I don't know. I don't know why I did it like this way. I feel like I could present the work in different ways. I feel like I could present the work sometimes in a way just purely technical, have more detailed drawings, go through it like the wall sections, talk about how we deal with moisture, water protection or something like this. But at the same time, I didn't do it. So I don't know. I think I always thought the model of architecture where I was from in this provincial thing was like art historical models. Like, you look at art history and you bring it into architecture, like someone like Stan Allen, Eisman. I mean, the horrors of these things at some level, looking at a kind of aesthetic project almost, or an art historical project. And so we started with that. And I think now we are just more in conversation with, we probably are more in conversation with objects, as Juan said, than we are with that. But that's, I think, where we started.
your microphone for the lecture. I know your work for a long time, but it took me a while to understand. I needed to understand where your practice is and what are the variables you have to deal with to understand your position. And listening to you tonight and hearing you talk about the variables that are involved in each project, for me it was I previously read the description, but now listening to you live in front, I was surprised about how all the variables are named or are described like with no worries, no exclamation, like without being sad about them or without being extremely excited about them. You're like all the time trying to keep like a distance. Right? Everything you mentioned or the elements that are part of your architecture are before being part of the project are like set in a comfortable distance, let's call it like that, to be part of something when it's finally put together. Knowing that in the US it's super hard to be academic and also be having a practice, I understand that you can argue that, but you need to learn how to first to accept the variables as they are. It's now I know that it's super hard to build in the US compared to our city or our country. But now, seeing your new project, you are like, instead of trying to escape from that tough place, let's call it, you're like even going deeper and deeper because you just present like housing project that you mentioned, that they're like the most difficult arena to have a project with. And the more you deal with real things, the more surreal the images become. So I just wanted to share this with you and know what you think. It's not a question.
I think the distance thing is right, and I don't know. That seems right to me. I don't know what to make of it totally because it is there in the work. It's a sort of deadpan almost too. It's a kind of that's the way I talk, even monotonous maybe. Sorry, and it is also in the work. A lot of the work that we like to some degree is like that, I think. So I always thought if you've ever read like John Haydock's descriptions, they're amazing. They're like half a house, half a bedroom, it's just like a list of these things. I mean, I think in some ways we're very much indebted to that history. Kind of is an aesthetic of lists almost too, is in his work. So the rest is the difficulty of practice. It's not that difficult. Yeah, it's not that difficult. Sorry, practice really. I mean, the difficulty is like finding. The difficulty is always money, to be honest. But the practice part of it, there's work in the U.S. if you really want it, and sometimes it's very compromised work, and we've rushed towards some of that stuff, even though it's difficult. Like housing, I mean, there's way more to talk about any of those projects. The strange thing was like literally when I was coming here to present before, I was like, okay, this time I'm going to do like 2 projects and I'm going to talk in all detail from beginning to end, and I'm going to go through it. Like that was the way I was set up the lecture. And then as working on it, it was hard to do that. I just thought. I also think maybe I always still think people don't know anything about our work. So I just like want to show the work as a whole, but every project could be its own. I mean, you could go forever into a project. So I don't know if the distance thing I have to think about, I kind of makes me feel like I'm very reactionary as a person. So when you say that, I think, oh, we should be trying not to be distant anymore or something. But it's true, it's there. All right. Thank you. Is that it? Or is there any more questions? Yeah, I think that's probably it.
I don't know if there's any other questions. If not, thank you.
Thanks.